Hello, and welcome to week 2 of supervision and evaluation of staff. This week, module number 2 is going to focus on evaluation in Nebraska. So, policy guidance and effective practice. If you remember back to last week, we focused on the rationale and historical perspectives that inform evaluation nationally. And we are going to zoom in this week to look at our local policy and guidance. And we are going to start to explore specific effective teacher behaviors. So there are 3 main module objectives this week. First is just to simply learn about the requirements and guidance written by the Nebraska Department of Education so that we can understand the key issues and components of evaluation in order to analyze our own district's evaluation requirements and components and start thinking about how we can apply those. So this week is going to be a lot about compliance, but I always want you to be thinking about purpose and commitment. So I want to start with, and always first and foremost is, what is the purpose of supervision and evaluation? And Kim Marshall, you may be familiar with him. He writes the weekly Marshall Memo. I highly recommend subscribing to the Marshall Memo. If you do not, every week he summarizes and reviews key research articles that are relevant to K-12 education. He also specializes in teacher supervision and evaluation. And he outlines 5 key purposes for evaluation. So the first is simply just appraisal. And we read about this last week about how important it is that not only evaluators, but teachers themselves have a very accurate sense of what the quality of instruction is in all classrooms on a proficiency scale. The Mirage, the Wallace Foundation, all emphasize that importance of accurately assessing what are high quality, effective practices that are in place in the classroom and which ones are not. Not only being able to identify those, but also being able to communicate and acknowledge to then inform professional learning and continuous improvement. The second is affirmation. So when we give feedback to people and recognize what they're doing, it leads to increased retention um, and development of teachers, especially those in the top categories. Um, Improvement, coaching and supporting the development of teachers, especially those that might be in the bottom categories. House cleaning. So if there are teachers, and this is like that small 2% that are not effective after having opportunities to improve, or are having a negative impact on students, being able to dismiss them. And then finally, quality insurance. So this is our responsibility to our stakeholders, to our students, and to our parents, that you are entrusting us with your kids, and we are ensuring that they are receiving the best possible education that they could. I really, like, from my perspective, I think these 2 are probably the most important. In recent years, when I've spoken with my colleagues and friends about morale in education in general, I have asked them, how often are you spending in classroom? How much time are you spending in classrooms right now? And what type of feedback are you giving your teachers? During the pandemic, I saw some districts make the decision to back off of evaluation, and my recommendation was lean into it. When we recognize and affirm what teachers are doing in their classrooms, that is motivating. for teachers, for anyone. And then finally, I truly do believe that evaluation is one of our most powerful tools for continuous improvement, not only of individual teachers, but of the organization itself. And we will explore that issue more and more throughout the course. This is my own personal, so I am going to chime in and tell you what I think as a practitioner. I will always talk about research, but I'm also going to talk about my experiences over the last 23 years. And as I talked about earlier or last week, the district that I'm in, we are in year 2 of implementing our new evaluation system. And this is our belief statement, and this really reflects my values as well. That effective teacher evaluation does lead to the growth and efficacy of teachers and ultimately the achievement of students. And that is when you have opportunities for reflection and feedback. You are fostering truly the growth and having that mindset. And it's dependent on a partnership between teachers and administrators. So we're going to get into our first objective, which is to really understand Nebraska policy and guidance. And so there are 3 main things that are influencing certificated staff evaluation in public education. The first is LB 79828, which is actual state statute. And what's interesting about our state statute is that it addresses only probationary teachers. And so it really clarifies what the expectations are for the evaluation of a probationary teacher. I have dropped this in your files to review, and this is really important in instances when you would not renew a probationary teacher's contract. So, in those probationary years, there are opportunities if a teacher, if you're doing some housekeeping, that though is dependent upon meeting the expectations of the statute. The second guidance that we are going to look into and explore that I've included in your files this week is AQuest, which is our state accountability system. And then finally, the policy piece. And NDE, the NDE policy that spells out the expectations for teacher certification is Rule 10. So let's get started. We talked about that state statute that does influence our probationary teachers. So we're going to move into AQuest. And the Nebraska Department of Education approves all school districts and make sure that the school district policy is in line with the expectations of statute and NDE policy. They accredit a school district, and you have to be accredited by the Department of Education in order to function as a school district. And they also provide accountability. AQuest is the framework for accountability that we operate, all school districts operate with. So these are the standards or the framework that we use to inform our work as school districts. There are 3 domains of AQuest. Those are leadership. The second is success, access, and support. And the third domain is teaching, learning, and serving. So, in terms of supervision and evaluation, the domain that is relevant is teaching, learning, and serving. There are 3 tenets that are connected to that domain. Those are educator effectiveness, student achievement and growth, and post-secondary career and civic readiness. We are going to focus on that AQuest tenet that is connected to educator effectiveness. And so this tenet is that students are surrounded by effective and qualified educators throughout every learning experience, pre-K 12. And every school and district develops effective teachers and leaders to establish a culture of success. So that's the big picture of that tenet. And if you dig into educator effectiveness in AQuest, these were the evidence-based analysis tool statements. There are 4 statements, and I'm hoping that you're starting to make the connections back to what we read last week, which would be recommendations for best practice in teacher evaluation. So 1, the school is utilizing data-informed strategies for measuring and addressing student engagement. And so that would be, using a framework, which is the second one. The school is utilizing a research-based instructional model aligned to the Nebraska Teacher and Principal Performance Framework. I have that bolded because we're going to talk about that. That's a really important concept. But that it's multiple measures. It's based on multiple classroom observations, student survey data, student achievement, that the school district has an annual professional learning plan to support the continuous improvement of staff, and that there's a technology infrastructure to support the teaching and learning needs of faculty and staff. So AQuest is the framework for accountability that really spells out what those standards and those expectations are. The policy is actually found in Rule 10. Rule 10 is all of the policy expectations for a school to be accredited or for their accreditation. Every school district is required to complete a Rule 10 compliance survey. It's a self-assessment every single year. And then every 5 years, there is a Rule 10 accreditation external visit, and where people actually come in on site. They make observations, they look at evidence and documents of the school district to ensure that the school district is indeed meeting the expectations and the policy requirements from Rule 10. These are all of the different components of accreditation. We are really going to be focusing in on certificated employee evaluation, which is Rule 10 7.06. Now, there's 2 connections to this. So the quality indicator is that the primary purpose from Rule 10 is that the primary purpose of certificated employee evaluation is to improve student learning, and that the procedures are clear, equitable, and systematic. Now, this quality indicator was established by the Department of Education in 2010. The AQuest tenet that is connected to this Rule 10 7.06 is that, again, it's effective educators, that students are surrounded by effective and qualitative educators throughout every learning experience. So this is the purpose for this Rule 10 statute, right? And then we have Rule 10 policy so that we can ensure that students have effective educators. This week, I do want you do not have to read all of Rule 10, but you do need to read pages 26 and 27 of Rule 10, which outlines the expectations for evaluation in Nebraska. Now, this is going to be important reading for you because, 1, you need to understand the expectations and components of an effective evaluation system. This is going to inform your learning or serve as the foundation of your learning for future modules. It's also going to be pretty instrumental for the completion of the assignment this week, which is to analyze your district's evaluation process. I'm also included in your files the 2017 version of the Nebraska Department of Education's Teacher and Principal Performance Framework. Included with this framework are the 2014 supporting documents and guidance to the Teacher and Principal Performance Framework. So Rule 10 outlines the policy and the requirements for all Nebraska certificated employee evaluation processes. Then this Nebraska Department of Education Teacher and Principal Performance Framework. This is the support that the Department of Education provides to all districts to inform the development of the process. Now, this might not seem very relevant to you because you have all you know is your current district's evaluation system. This was particularly important to me the past 3 years because, yes, in my previous district, I was part of the implementation of a new evaluation system, but I didn't know where that came from. I didn't know what had informed that work. So if you're ever in a situation where one, you are working to implement or significantly revise your own evaluation system, these documents are really important because they inform and communicate. They provide you guidance for what you need to have as part of your evaluation system. I also think they're important as a good check. And that's what we're all going to have today or this week is the opportunity to evaluate our own internal systems. And so you are going to read those pages of Rule 10, which is the policy. Then you're going to read this short report. And then there are a couple of supporting documents that get into an overview, just different components of the evaluation process. And these are really short reads, I promise, but they're going to help you to see, does our district have this component in place? And I'm going to tell you off the bat, like when we redid our evaluation process, there's a couple of parts that these are recommendations. They're not necessarily requirements. So Rule 10 are requirements. The Nebraska Teacher and Principal Performance Framework, those are recommendations. Now, there are some clear requirements in here, and the the next thing you're going to need to do this week as well is you're going to need to locate your district certificated employee evaluation policy. So you're going to need to go into your board policy and find that. And then if your district has an evaluation policy or handbook, so we have a policy that meets the components of Rule 10 and gives a general overview of evaluation. We have a handbook that gets more in depth. Our board also approves the handbook as well. And so, again, just to summarize, because this is a lot on this page. So we have Rule 10, which is those are the requirements for certificated employee evaluation. Educator effectiveness, and I have put the website for that. That is the support. I want to take some time to just give you an overview and give you some things to think about in terms of how you want to use these resources and how much time this week you want to spend on different types of resources. So, the educator effectiveness website, which I just had on the previous slide, those are the resources and documents to support districts in building and revising and continuously improving their teacher evaluation system. So where did this come from? If you remember in 2009, during the race to the top, that's when a lot of the widget effect, like there was a lot of national attention on effective evaluation systems. And so a lot of states across the country had started to look at their state practices for teacher evaluation. Teacher evaluation is a state-driven state-driven policy. So Rule 10 is our policy. There's a couple of statutes. So in 2011 was when the first Department of Ed teacher and principal performance framework came out. This was revised in 2017. And so when you go to that website, I highly recommend the 2014 archived guiding documents. And I have actually uploaded the ones that I think are the most informative. And I do think you should review those in order to do an effective analysis. Those are on that site. And so at that point in time, again, the purpose was to set the expectations of effective practices to improve teaching and to be really clear about here's the process. So it authorized the development of evaluation models for teachers and principals. So it lined out based on the best practice of that time that you read about last week, what states what districts should have in place. Now, the thing about Nebraska is a state that really does support and believe in local school district control. And so you will see in this document that districts had a choice. They could choose from the Danielson model or the Marzano model. And all districts had the opportunity to add local standards to their model. So there was a framework that was recommended, but districts had the flexibility to determine what framework they wanted to implement. Okay, so this is 2017. This is the last time that was revised. Let's fast forward to 2019. And at this point in time, SEED, or Supporting Educator Effectiveness Through Development, came to fruition. And this was a collaboration between the Department of Education, the educational service units, local educator associations, and education preparation programs. So, like Doane, UNL, Peru. So, representatives from all these groups came together to really look into what are the standards, right, for teacher and principal performance. And so they created this document, which is also uploaded into the files for this week. And you do need to review those because that is going to be part of your analysis, is comparing your district's instructional framework to these Nebraska teacher and principal performance standards. And the purpose that you will read that was outlined was that there would be a common language to be used across the state. We'd have common skills that we were working to develop across all educators in Nebraska. This could be used to support professional learning. And there's this additional component that we haven't read or seen, which is family and community engagement. So we talked about the policy. We've talked about the support that the Nebraska of Education is providing, and then it's up to individual districts to implement this at a local level. And so a lot of what's outlined in the policy and the guiding and supporting documents is compliance. I want us to refocus, and I always want you to keep in mind what is the purpose of supervision and evaluation. And so, if we go back to the state of Nebraska, the primary purpose of certificated employee evaluation, right, is to improve student learning, and that we have a really clear, equitable, and systematic process to do that. And then with AQuest, we want to ensure that all students have access to highly effective and qualified teachers. And then we want to look at those Marshall pieces as well, which is going back to what we read last week, that accuracy of really clarifying what are the strengths and what are the areas that need to be improved in every single classroom. We want to affirm and recognize teachers that are performing at top levels. And then we also want to be able to coach and continuously improve the practice of everyone. There are going to be opportunities or instances in evaluation where we are going to have to use it for job performance and dismissal. And then we owe our public and every student, every parent, we want to assure them that they have a high quality and effective teacher every year. It does not matter which teacher you get. So this week, the majority of your application assignment this week is going to be to review your current evaluation documents. And so you need to, again, pull your district board policy on evaluation of certificated staff, and if you have a staff handbook. Now, I have included, and these you do not need to read, but I have included the evaluation handbook that we just developed in Waverly over the last year. And I provided that just so you have an example of what that can look like. When I was working to develop that with our team, I reached out to colleagues and I used the evaluation handbooks from other districts as well. And so your analysis is going to be twofold. So in your assignment, I am going to have an analysis tool for you. So you'll have all of those questions included. The first analysis is a compliance check. So we are going to just check to make sure, does your system include all of those components that are required in Rule 10? And then there's a couple that are recommended, but not necessarily required. And so you're going to do analysis of that. And then I'm going to talk all the time about evaluation as a function of compliance because we do have to do it out of compliance. And I'm always going to, I mean, my purpose in this class is to get you committed to evaluation and to recognize just the impact it can have on teachers' engagement, student learning, and continuous improvement. So I'm going to have you start thinking about that. We're going to do that commitment check. And so you are going to answer that question. What are the aspects of the evaluation system that match the current guidance from NDE? But then we're going to go back to Marshall's 5, right? So we're going to go back and we're going to take a look at those components, that appraisal, affirmation, improvement, house cleaning, and quality insurance. And I want you to really start reflecting and thinking about which of those functions are addressed within the system that you see, okay? And which ones aren't addressed at all. So that's going to be your analysis assignment. And then we are going to, you're going to start thinking about an evaluator's interview. And so you are going to interview somebody who supervises or evaluates people. And so if you're a teacher, you might do a principal. You could do somebody who works at the central office level. If you're currently working at the central office, again, I would encourage you. Anyone who evaluates somebody else, and I will attach a little explanation and overview of that as well. So I hope that you have a great week. If you have any questions or need clarifications, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you.